Hi, everyone. I'm so pleased to have you here today to talk about Ohio's primary and giving you guys some really good tips on how you can make sure that your vote is counted this season. I am Camille Wimbish. I'm with the Ohio Voter Rights Coalition, and I am joined by my friends Jen Miller with the League of Women Voters of Ohio and Mia Lewis, who's from Common Cause Ohio. Here are our smiling faces. So today we're going to give you an overview on how we got here, what's happening with the primary. We're going to go over some best practices on vote by mail. And we're also going to share with you ways that you can get involved through our social media campaign and texting. And we will have a question and answer, frequently asked questions sheet available for you, and share these slides out if you have more questions that we aren't able to answer today. So let's start with the primary. What in the world happened? So going back around 2.5 weeks ago, we were scheduled to have an in-person primary election. But in the hours leading up to the election, there was a last-minute decision made to cancel the in-person voting. And certainly we agree with the notion that we wanted to make sure that people are able to vote safely, and that given the circumstances around COVID-19, it just wasn't possible to have an election where people were able to vote safely. And so there's a lot of confusion with the rollout, but ultimately the decision was the correct decision to make sure that Ohioans, our poll workers are safe, and the folks that we're asking to turn out to vote were safe. And then leading into the next couple days, there was a lot of uncertainty about when the election would be rescheduled. Ultimately, the legislature decided to pass legislation to have an extended vote by mail period that ends April 28th. And so we'll go through that. Again, it's an all vote by mail election. So folks that have already voted, don't worry, your votes will be cast. But for folks who weren't able to go in person to the polls on election day, you're able to cast a ballot by mail. And so voters this week should be receiving postcards with information on how to request a vote by mail application. There is some limited early in-person voting at the boards of elections for folks who are homeless or who have disabilities. But you are not going to be able to go to the polls on April 28th. So just please keep that in mind. So I know you're thinking, a postcard, how do I get an absentee ballot application? This is all very confusing. Wouldn't it be great if I just got an absentee application mailed to my house? We're there, we're with you. We thought that would be the best scenario as well. The Secretary of State actually wanted to send out absentee applications to all registered voters, and he was actually proposing to have an election date that was much further out in the future, so June 2nd. So that there was time to give folks absentee applications. But the legislature decided not to go that route. The legislature said, we want to have a certainty around this election. We want to wrap this up by April 28th. And we're not going to be able to send out absentee applications to everyone under this abbreviated timeline. So the compromise was to send out a postcard to every registered voter, and that's going to have information on how they can request the ballot. Now, as you may understand, this postcard and letting people know about the need to request an absentee ballot is an extra step because it's not actually giving people ballots in their hands. Folks are going to have to do the first step by requesting the ballot, and that means we have to get moving quickly so folks are able to vote. This is a picture of the postcard. And again, it sort of shows people there are 3 ways to request an absentee application. The first is by going to voteohio.gov. Now, the thing about this is you're going to need to get a printer and some postage in order to be able to print out an application. If you don't have a printer or postage, you can call the Board of Elections, and they will send you an absentee application request form. And keep in mind, it is just the request form. You can't call the board and they'll send you a ballot. They're going to send you a request form. So that's a reason why you got to get moving quickly. And then let's say you don't want to call the board, you're tired of being on hold, you're having trouble reaching them. You can go ahead and make your own request form by filling out, just a piece of paper with first name, last name, date of birth, and the following fields. Make sure you indicate what type of ballot you actually want, because this is a primary election. So just follow those directions, and that's how you can request your own application. All right, so just top lines again. There is no early in-person voting on 4/28 unless you have a disability or you don't have a mailing address, so you're experiencing homelessness. So you'll be able to go to the Board of Elections to do that voting for those limited circumstances. You will not be able to go to your polling place. So that's what I've got. I think we've got Jen Miller with the League who's going to take us through some vote by mail best practices.
Great.
Go ahead, Jen.
Our absentee process is a little complicated. I'm glad that we have it so that we can rely on it now, but it's important for all of us to be serving voters in this time. Just so everyone knows, about 85% of voters wait to vote in person on election day. So there's more than 7 million Ohioans who have not cast a ballot this primary who may still be interested in doing so. And so I'm glad all of you are interested in helping voters navigate. So first, as Camille said, every voter must request a ballot to vote by mail. Ballots do not automatically come. In order to get your vote by mail ballot, or what we call the absentee ballot, you have to fill out an application. And that cannot be done online. The form can be found online. You can fill in some fields online, but you would still need to print that out and send that in. So you can go to, we have a bit.ly link here, or you can just go to your Board of Election or the Secretary of State's site to print out an application. You can call your Board of Elections and ask them to send you one. Be prepared. Sometimes the lines are long, but it is a good option. Some have an automated phone system to request an application, so make sure you're listening to the automation because that can be a quick option for you. And there may be applications available in your community, like at grocery stores or elsewhere. And then finally, if you don't have a printer, you can use just a regular piece of paper. You do need to include all the various line items, and you can go to the Secretary of State's website to see what those line items are. The boards of elections, you could also drive into your county board of elections and get a form. So if you don't have a stamp, you can still vote. And because you have to send in your application for your ballot. So one way is you can drop that off at the Board of Elections. Some have drop boxes, some do not. For some of you, that will be convenient because you live near your Board of Elections, you have transportation. Others may not, and so you will have to get a stamp. You can buy books of stamps at the grocery store, you can buy singular stamps at the local post office. The good news is when you actually get your ballot back, so you mail in your application, they send your ballot back, it will come with a prepaid postage envelope. Okay, so the application, a lot of us, I am so guilty of messing up forms. I do this all the time, a lot of us do. So we just want to give you some tips. Yes, we want you to ask for your application right away. We want you to turn it around right away, but don't rush the process of filling it out. Make sure you're really reading the fields. It's important that you fill it out correctly the first time. If you mess up, you'll be able to reapply for a ballot, but because we have so little time, the time may run out on you. So make sure you put your name, and make sure date of birth is, that's one of the first common mistakes, and is people will put, the children's birthday, today's date. Make sure you put your date of birth. The address is where you're registered is where you live. Sometimes people think that's your polling location. No, that is the address where you live. If you're somewhere else, and maybe you are at you know, sheltering in place with a family member or something. If you're somewhere else and you need your address mailed to another location, that's the mailing address category. Make sure that you provide one of the IDs, but then the date of election, March 17th, 2020 is what we suggest, but the other dates of April 28th or June 2nd would also be accepted. Make sure you say it's the primary, and very, very, very importantly, make sure you pick whether you want a Democrat, Republican, or issues only ballot. Otherwise, the Board of Elections will not know which one to send. And please do not forget to sign and date. Okay, so again, as we said, it's a tight timeline. Mail can take 3 to 5 days one way, and that's in non-pandemic conditions. So you should act today. We encourage you to check with your loved ones, your friends, your family members when you are checking in with them to make sure they're okay during these rough times. It's also great to make sure that they understand the election process and that they know that they need to act today. You can request a ballot up to April 25th, but if you wait that long, you're most likely not going to get your ballot on time. Also, your absentee ballot, once you get it, it needs to be postmarked by the 27th. I'm hearing a lot of people talk about how election day is the 28th, and that's technically right, but if you are mailing it in, it has to be postmarked by the 27th. On the 28th, you can only hand it in to your Board of Elections. So again, that's really only for folks that have an ability to transport themselves easily to that Board of Elections. Again, polling locations will not be open, so your absentee ballot will need to be postmarked by the 27th or turned in by the 28th. And as long as it's received by the postmarked by the 27th and received by May 8th, it will count. Let's keep going. All right, the other thing is, since it's a tight turnaround, we are encouraging voters to do their research in advance. And I understand you may want to wait to see what's on your ballot, but the great news, you can find what's on your ballot today. You can go to the Secretary of State site to find your ballot. You can go to the Board of Elections. The League of Women Voters Nonpartisan Voter Guide, vote411.org. You can enter your address and enter your party affiliation, and you can compare candidates or find out pros and cons of issues. And then Judicial Votes Count is a really great resource. Please don't skip voting for judges in your area. Judges affect our everyday lives, and so do your research through Judicial Votes Count as well. Okay, so student voters, super important, super confusing. A lot of student voters are registered at their campus address, their school address. So there's a couple things to keep in mind. One, that means their postcard is going to their school address, and they may not even get that mail. So it's really important to check in with students to make sure that they know that the election is now vote by mail, and that it is in April, that the date is the 27th for postmarking or 28th for delivery. Secondly, wherever they are registered, that's the county where they need to request their ballot from. So if I live in Cleveland, but I go to Ohio State and I am registered at Ohio State, I need to request my ballot from Franklin County. If you remember, on the application, you have the address where you're registered and the address where you can mail it. So the great news is that a student who's in Cleveland doesn't have to, but is registered in Columbus, doesn't have to be in Columbus to vote. They just need to make sure they are requesting it from the Franklin County Board of Elections. Hopefully that was clear. Tracking your ballot. You can track your ballot. This is a really great, helpful tool, especially because there's going to be lots of days in between transactions because it could be in the mail. So this is a link where you can track your application. And you should note that if you requested your ballot, right around when the primary was supposed to happen, it would take a little extra time for those ballots to get mailed out. But you're going to want to track and make sure. This can also tell you if for some reason you made a mistake on your form and you were denied, and you can reapply. If you look on here and it's been several days since you sent it in, and you don't see, you're tracking your ballot and you don't see anything, it's not a bad idea to call your Board of Elections just to check on your application. Again, if you've moved, you can vote. That's the good news. You would, again, on that address where you're registered, you would put your correct address, and you'll be given a provisional ballot. So a provisional ballot will still allow you to vote at your correct address, and the Board of Elections will let you know what else is needed for your ballot to count. Okay, thanks
Thank
so
you,
much.
Jen. Now we've got Mia Lewis from Common Cause, Ohio, to tell us how folks can get involved and help spread the word about the primary election.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, so you guys are experts now, so you can help us and share this information. It's amazing how difficult it is to inform 7 million people of all the changes that are going on. So we have some social media images that various groups in our coalition have made, and there's a link right here, and I know that you're gonna get access to this slideshow. And you can go into that folder. That's a link to a folder where there's quite a few different images that you can share on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or just email out to your membership to let them know what they can do. Here's another example of an image. We're trying to make sure that folks see all the different ways that they can get that absentee ballot. The Secretary of State actually updated their website, so they now have a landing spot that takes you right to a page which shows all the different ways that you can apply for that ballot. So that's really helpful. And I think on the next screen there's another one. Here's another image. So lots of choices. You can take a look in the folder and see which one you want to use or make your own. And you can share information. You know, if you are having like weekly calls, let folks know some of this information about the election. Just give them a rundown, tell them about applying for an absentee ballot. You can share our posts on social media. You can put some of this in a newsletter. And then if you're actually having a meeting, an online meeting, and you want one of us to join you and help give information or answer questions, we're very, very happy to do that. And we are tweeting and posting all the time about all this stuff. So, you know, if you follow us, then you'll have good things to be able to reshare and spread and retweet and all of that. And then we really want to know your story. There's a couple of things that we're asking. If you have something that happened to you, even let's say you were confused and you didn't know and you weren't sure what you were supposed to do, and then you got some information, there's a link there where you can sign up to say that you're willing to kind of share your story outside of this circle, maybe on TV, on the radio, in op-eds or letter to the editor. So take a look there. If you think you have something that's worth sharing, click on that link and there'll be a form there that you can fill out. And this is another important thing. We have a texting campaign. The Voting Rights Coalition has started a texting campaign set up by the Ohio Organizing Collaborative, and it's peer-to-peer. So any volunteer, any one of your membership, any one of your friends, any people in other states, anyone that you know who's interested, who's maybe an activist who's usually out and about doing stuff in the community and they're sitting at home and they want to know how they can be helpful, they can actually text Ohio voters and give them information right away about how they can apply for their absentee ballot. So it's a pretty simple process. You sign up, you download Outvote, and then you attend a training, and then you can right away start texting voters. And we've got actually hundreds and hundreds of people already doing it. We're trying to reach 1 million voters, which would be really cool to give them access to the information that they need to be able to participate. And so we definitely encourage you to join us. There's training on April 11th, on April 13th, and on April 15th. And whenever you're doing this texting, you have support. You have frequently asked questions that a page that you can look at, and you have access to emails of people who will help answer your questions as you're getting up and running. And it's not a bad idea to share this with your membership, because you know, who knows what's going to be all the way until November. You know, people who usually do in person, who usually knock doors or they're out canvassing, we're going to need to contact voters in another way. And so learning how to do this kind of peer-to-peer texting is really good. And this is a pretty no stress way to get up and running on a texting program. And then this is another really important point. We all know that this has been a messed up process. And I mean, don't even say Wisconsin or we'll all pass out. But we can only advocate for positive changes when we have evidence about the problems that have occurred. So if you applied for your absentee ballot a month ago and you still haven't gotten it, that's a problem. And we want to know about that problem. And this link here is takes you to a form where you can just simply write out what happened to you. It doesn't need to be terrible and horrendous. It can be something that's resolved, or it can be something that isn't resolved and you really just need some help with it. You don't know what to do. And that is both a place where we can reach out and help you and respond to you. And it's also a place where we can record all the things that have happened, so that later when someone says, well, that election was fine, there weren't really any problems, it seemed to go pretty smoothly for me, we can say, well, actually, no, we have hundreds and hundreds of recorded evidence here from voters who had these specific problems. So if you know someone who's had a problem, you can share that link with them. And as long as you put your contact information, we'll be able to get back in touch with you and try to help you figure out what's going on. And that's it.
So that wraps up our content for today. We will be sure to share these slides with you so you can have them for a reference. And we also have a frequently asked questions sheet that may have some additional information that you're looking for. But we wanted to thank you for attending, and feel free to reach out to any of us if you have questions. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.